a sec. Okay. So I prepared some words. So thank you for coming to this special League of Women Voters of Kansas City meeting. Special thanks to the Election Administration Study Committee for their diligence and hard work on this project. We should all be very proud of the work done over the last year. If adopted, these new positions will help us in our work to protect the right to vote here in the LWVKC service area and possibly across the state of Missouri. Thank you, committee, for your work. As we thank the committee, we also thank you, the members. This was a months-long process which involved each of you. You read the materials provided by the committee. You showed up in February to learn more. You came to consensus meetings where there were informed, heartfelt, and productive discussions. And now you have come to this meeting. Thank you, members, for your work. Now to the procedures for today's meeting. The bylaws state that we may hold a special membership meeting wherein we discuss only the topic proposed for the meeting. The bylaws also state that we adopt a program which includes local positions by vote with a quorum of 15% of our members in attendance. We, of course, have that. The topic of today's meeting is the adoption of new positions based on the Election Administration Study Committee's findings. The positions were carefully written to reflect the consensus statements crafted during the 2 consensus meetings held earlier this year. The Board of Directors has reviewed the positions and confirms that they are fully consistent with the consensus statements crafted by the membership. As such, we will open the floor for clarifying questions, but will consider debate on the positions closed. And now to the business at hand. And the original plan was for me to read each of these positions, but I think I will let Greg, with his full voice, actually read those for you, and then I will call for a vote. So give us just a moment. If you'll be a little bit patient, I'm going to, actually, I won't spotlight myself then. I'll just share my screen. So let me share my screen. And I will go back. Here we go. Okay, Greg.
Okay, I will proceed and read. First of all, to make sure, you should see on your, those of you on the Zoom should see preface. Okay, so our preface here is to the existing League of Women Voters United States and League of Women Voters of Missouri voting rights positions. So this is what we have already. The U.S. position is that the League of Women Voters of the United States believes that voting is a fundamental citizen right that must be guaranteed. The League of Women Voters of Missouri, their positions on voting rights and election process are the support of an accurate, recountable, efficient, accessible, accountable, and uniform electoral process, the support of measures to ensure a secret ballot, the support of absentee voting, advanced voting, and measures that facilitate participation in the election process, and the support and advocate for alternative voting systems. So those are the existing positions. And if we could go to the next screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to read the positions, and then after I've read the positions, then I'll turn it back over to you to ask for the vote. Okay.
Yes.
So we're going to do this for every one of the draft positions. So the first set of positions is on election worker intimidation. Draft position 1, election worker intimidation, protecting election workers from threats. The position is as follows. Rationale: elections are the cornerstone of our democracy. Election workers and election officials are essential for the administration of local, state, and federal elections. Retention of trained and experienced election workers and officials preserves institutional knowledge, which improves the voting process and ensures eligible voters are able to exercise their right to vote. Election workers and officials should be protected from doxing, threats, and harassment in accordance with their status as election workers to our democracy. Protecting our election workers and officials requires consequences, for those who threaten and harass election workers and officials, 1, while engaged in the performance of their duties, or 2, in retaliation for the performance of the election workers or officials' duties, or 3, by doxing their personal information. The position: the League of Women Voters of Kansas City supports measures aimed at protecting and retaining election workers and officials. The League of Women Voters of Kansas City supports making the penalties for those who threaten or harass election workers and officials, 1, while engaged in the performance of their duties, or 2, in retaliation for the performance of the election workers or officials' duties, or 3, by doxing their personal information, the same as the penalties imposed for similar conduct against law enforcement, judiciary, and other public officials. Ann?
Okay, so I ask that everyone in favor, please raise your virtual or your real hand, and we'll get just a quick count.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
I hear some dissent from the
Okay.
audience. From
Yes.
the in
Okay.
person.
So and if you could explain
why we're
Margie,
taking a vote.
well, let's get the vote done, and then we'll explain this concept. Okay.
Okay. Anyone opposed, please? So all those in favor, please put your hand down. And anyone who opposes approval of the position, please raise your hand. Okay. So
Okay.
that position passes. We adopt that position.
So and yeah. So Alice, if you could come to the table, and then Ann will address the issue we have with our bylaws.
Yes, the consensus model is a very well.
Yeah, right here. You have to be right here.
I can't see anybody.
You're fine.
okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. You can hear me. I can't see you. The consensus model is a well-defined model, and there are 3 different versions that I have studied. But in the consensus model, you don't vote. You don't raise hands. You don't say aye, nay, abstain. It's a model of bringing people together to a consensus, which is a sense of we agree in general. So in the end, but the steps in front have already been done, clarification of the information of the statement. So what I understand in the bylaws is that our consensus, if we have one, goes to the board, and then the board accepts our consensus, right?
Well, the bylaws actually state that we adopt our program by vote, and that the positions are part of our program, that we affirm old position, existing positions, and that we vote in, that we also adopt new positions as part of our program plan process. And so the bylaws actually state that we do that by vote. And so that's part of, you are right that the consensus model is what we have mainly used for this. And so that is why we consider debate closed. But we do actually have more people here than attended the consensus meeting. So we are happy to entertain a clarifying question or two. But yeah, this is an up or down vote to confirm these positions. Peg?
Okay, so I had talked with Alice about this a while back as well. But it seems like now that I have read all of the material, it appears that the consensus, you had 2 consensus meetings, which is what a study is all about. And then you come together, you have your consensus meetings. Then normally, so the consensus is already reached, right? And so then normally what would have happened, and I think we've done this before on the studies that Alice was done and involved in, you take them to the membership at your normal annual meeting, or you can have, you can call a special meeting to handle something. And I think we've had one of those before. So this is kind of what you're doing here is two-step process. You've already done the consensus. And you're right, there's probably more people on this call that weren't involved in that consensus, but this is the consensus that has been brought to the board already.
Right.
And so that's already done and over. Now you're just saying, rather than waiting until the May annual meeting, hey, let's get these as part of our positions now so that we can act if something comes up, particularly in the legislative session. Is that what's happening, Ann?
Thank you very much, Peg, for clarifying that for us. Yes, it is. She is absolutely right that that is a piece of information that we left out, which is that normally we would vote these positions in May as part of our annual meeting when we vote in our entire program. And so we do vote for that program in May, as our bylaws say. We have removed this piece of it, and we're doing it a couple of months early so that we can ask for consensus from the state at their May meeting. And in fact, Greg is going to put a nice bow on this and deliver it straight to the state as soon as we're an hour after we're finished with this meeting, so that they can get it turned around to the state board. So, so we are following the model that we followed before. I think we're just doing it a little bit out of order. And Peg is right too, that we're doing it early so that we can use these positions for advocacy during the legislative session.
And okay, now we have Evelyn coming to the podium.
Hi,
Okay.
just want confirmation from particularly Peg, because I agree with everything you said, Peg. What we're doing today is voting on the adoption of what has been agreed to by consensus.
Yes.
Peg, I want clarity that we cannot change the wording on anything today either, can we? That this wording is set.
No,
and
this
it's
is an
either
up or
a
down
yes or
vote.
no.
It is an
Peg,
up or down
Peg.
vote.
So we
That's
just need to clarify that point. No changes.
No.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And we're not voting on the positions, the positions, if you will. We're voting to adopt them as part of our program, which is kind of, we all know that that's kind of, I guess we could say we have positions and we're not going to adopt them. I guess you could do that, but I've not seen that in my thing. But yes, we're not voting on a consensus. We're voting to add them to our position statements.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, so we've got one adopted, and let's go on to the next one. Let me share my screen again.
Okay. Continuing with the draft positions on election worker intimidation. Draft position 2, election worker intimidation, the role of law enforcement. The rationale is in order to retain trained and experienced election workers and election officials, their safety and protection must be a priority with local and state law enforcement agencies. Law enforcement agencies must be aware of the potential for threats and harassment surrounding federal, state, and municipal elections, and should be provided with training on how to process reports of threats and harassment.
Oops.
Whoops. And if you could go back.
Did I go? Sorry.
Okay, so the position, the League of Women Voters of Kansas City believes state and local law enforcement agencies have a vital role to play in protecting election workers and officials. The League of Women Voters supports establishing standards for law enforcement agencies regarding the investigation and reporting of threats to or harassment of election workers and officials. Anne?
Okay, so once again, if you approve the adoption of this position, please raise your virtual or your real hand. Or not, if you're in the room, if you prefer that. Okay, and please put your hand down. And raise your hand if you object to the adoption of that position. Okay, that one passes as well. Oh, okay, so let me share my screen again and we'll go on to the next one. Oop. Sorry. Maybe it won't do that in slideshow. That seems to be messing it up. There you go, Greg.
Okay. Draft position 3. This continues on election worker intimidation. Transparently recording threats to and harassment of election workers. Rationale: there is presently no policy for mandatory investigating and reporting by law enforcement agencies of threats to and harassment of election workers and election officials. So the extent of the problem statewide is unknown. Position: the League of Women Voters Kansas City believes threats to and harassment of election workers and election officials threatens the integrity of elections. The extent of the threat could be better assessed if a record of all reports of threats to or harassment of election workers and officials was collected by the Secretary of State and made available to the public. Anne?
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, those opposed. Okay, that one passes as well. My compliments to the Zoom room for their quick lowering of their hands too, by the way.
Okay. All right, got comment from the audience. The observation was made that not everybody is voting, and so encouraging everybody to actually go through, either raise your Zoom hands or your actual hands.
Yes, yes. I am making note that there is a majority before I declare. Okay, Greg.
Okay, draft position 4. This is the regarding election challengers. Election challengers, out of jurisdiction election challengers. Rationale: voters should be protected from disruptive out of region challengers who may intimidate and suppress voting. Position: the League of Women Voters supports retention of the current Missouri requirement that challengers be eligible voters in their relevant jurisdiction. Anne?
Okay, everyone in favor, raise your hand, please. And I'm actually going to ask. I think we have enough people on Zoom, but can you tell me how many people are in the audience in person?
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 20. 20.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to ask.
And then we have 20 hands up here.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and all those opposed.
Yes, Kelly, if you could come to the microphone, please.
Regardless of the answer to my question, I'm good with it, but I'm a little unclear what a challenger is. Do you mean the person running for office or somebody from outside of the state or the jurisdiction coming in just to protest who's running?
It's
Yes.
someone who, yeah, I'll let you answer that, Greg.
So, challengers are by, there is a statute in Missouri law that defines what a challenger is. And they are designated by each political party. So and then Melanie and Stan, please speak up if and also Laura if I'm not accurate. But each political party may designate one person to be in the challenger role, okay? And they are in the voting area. The challenger per law must be a registered voter in the election jurisdiction, okay? And so to answer your question, that is what a challenger is. It is not anybody else. It is actually a person that is designated by the political parties and designated and accepted by the by election administration. Does that answer your question, Kelly?
Yeah, I guess I've never heard that.
Yes. Yeah. Laura, you have your hand up, and if you could approach the podium, you'll need to do that for our Zoom participants to hear.
Get it back on my laptop. The definition of challenger was also in the primers that we sent out when we first began to share the information from this study. So I was trying to look that up, but that should also be available on the website. So if anyone wants to go to the website, I can also bring it up and I can put it in the chat is what I was going to do for those of you online, and I can read it out for anyone that's here. But we do have that in our election administration materials.
It's Anne's email from yesterday.
Oh, thank you. Okay, so it's also in the email that Ann sent out yesterday. So yes, we've made an effort every time we shared materials with membership to define challenger. Okay.
Okay, we have two hands up in the Zoom room. Mary Ann, did you have a question? Nope. Okay, Peg. You're on Zoom, Peg.
Yeah.
I mean, on mute.
Yeah, thanks. That was my question, had to do with the challenger as well as being an election worker. I knew that there could be challengers that come in, but when you say that they're outside of the jurisdiction, but then I heard you say that to be a challenger, you have to be in that district. So are you saying to me that the challenger, if I'm in the Roanoke polling place, that the challenger has to be from that polling place, or they're in the Kansas City Election Board jurisdiction? And then so if these challengers already meet the requirements of the election board, then what I'm confused as to what the rationale for that is.
Right. So per the Missouri statute, you have to be a registered voter for
Yep.
that particular area. Okay. So in other words, if you can vote in that particular spot, then in that particular area, you can be a challenger. If you cannot vote, you cannot be a challenger in the jurisdiction. So, and then to follow up on your question, it is the out of region challengers that was and then again, to give some background, is the national concern. This is, again, to go back to another discussion I had. When we were conducting this study, what was prioritized were patterns that were both national and in Missouri. Okay, so and where there was incidence and where there was organization. And not only that, where there was legislative activity. So there are organizations in the United States that are conducting wholesale recruitment and training of challengers. And that wholesale recruitment and training of challengers then is intended to be deployed at areas where those organizations believe there is fraud. And usually those particular perspectives are highly partisan in nature, okay? And so then to get to the legislation part, last year, there was legislation proposed in the Missouri legislature that would have stripped the requirements that challengers be registered voters in the area, in the jurisdiction, at the polling place, okay? And if that had come to pass, then it would have been possible for a busload of people either from Cape Girardeau or from Houston to show up at a poll in Westport, okay? And of course, one of the dimensions of the challenger structure as is that, and Donna Hoke has raised this point in the past, there is this notion of importance of the idea that the people inside of the precinct, one way or another, have knowledge of each other or have greater knowledge of each other than people thousands of miles away. So to answer both Kelly's question and Peg, your question, I hope that does that.
Statute that I copied and put in the chat, and I can read it.
Okay, and then yeah, so Laura has very kindly taken the statute and put that in the chat.
Yeah. Does anyone here in person need the statute so that you understand what a challenger is? Everybody here okay? All right, because it's in the chat for the.
Okay, thank you. So we'll go on to the next draft position.
Did we vote?
We did.
We need to vote on number 4.
I thought we voted already, but
We did. We voted. Okay.
We did.
All right. We're all dealing with memory issues here.
Okay. All right. So we'll go on to number 5, Greg.
All right, I'll try to compose myself. Election challengers, again, challenger interaction with voters. So this will rhyme with what we just talked about. Rationale: voters should be protected from disruptive challengers that intimidate voting, that intimidate and suppress voting. The League of Women Voters Kansas City supports requirements that prohibit challengers from directly interacting with voters. It also believes that challenger activity should be clearly limited, including, number 1, challenges should only be made when the challenger believes the election laws of the state have been or will be violated. And 2, challenges should only be reported to the election judges or to the election authority if not satisfied with the decision of election judges. Ann?
All right. Those in favor, please raise your hands. Okay. How many do we have in the real life?
Oh, real life people, if you could, yes. We have everybody, all 20
Okay.
people here raising their hand.
Okay.
Okay, it's 18 now here. Okay.
Okay. And so, all right. Thank you. I got that. And anyone opposed, please raise your hand. Okay. That one passes as well. We'll go on to number 6.
Okay, number 6. This is our final election challenger position. Election challengers, restricting improper activity of challengers. Rationale: to protect voters from disruptive challengers who intimidate and suppress voting, election judges and authorities should have the obligation and the authority to ask disruptive challengers to cease disruptive activities and to exclude disruptive challengers, disruptive watchers or challengers from polling places or places where votes are counted. Position: the League of Women Voters Kansas City supports laws that require election authorities to take action if a challenger improperly interacts with voters. Ann?
Okay, those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, and how about the real room?
Real room. Okay, real room, all 18 hands are up.
Okay. And those opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, we have another winner. So that motion or that position is adopted. And we'll go on to number 7.
Okay, now we're moving on to voter intimidation and arms at the polls. Draft position 7, voter intimidation and arms at the polls, firearms in or about polling places. Rationale: allowing the open and or concealed carry of firearms up to the front door of polling places increases the likelihood that voters at such polling places will be intimidated. Position: the League of Women Voters Kansas City supports proposals that prohibit the concealed and open carry of firearms in or about polling places. Ann?
Okay, I see a couple of hands up that might be questions. Peg, did you have a question or? Okay, then I'm gonna call for the vote. So if you approve.
Okay, we have questions here.
Oh, we do have a
Elizabeth Starr,
question.
if you could approach the podium.
Absolutely.
Sorry to hold everybody up. It's unclear to me what it means. Where is it? We support proposals that prohibit the concealed and open carry of firearms. What are the proposals? I've heard proposals, everything from 50 feet to 2 miles. Do we know what the actual proposals are?
No, that's not part of
So,
the position.
Yeah, so let me address that.
Yeah,
There,
you address it here.
Yeah, so the idea here and the idea here is that when there's a position, you have a position and it is there, let's say it's on the shelf, to deal with some that may come up. In other words, we are addressing not only current proposals, but we are addressing also proposals that may be there in the future, and they have this particular dimension to it. So there is no specificity here on this, but it is meant to deal with proposals that may be crafted. Okay. Yes. But this is, let's put it this way. This is a statement of belief. This is a statement that we would advance. We know that from time to time there have been proposals in the state of Missouri and outside the state of Missouri that would seek those. And then Stan, if you've got your hand up, and I know you have something to say here. So Stan, if you could have something to say here too.
Yeah, well, there's a discrepancy in Missouri law with respect to this setback. Concealed carry is limited to 25 feet away from a polling place, but there is no similar requirement that open carry be restricted to the 25 feet. Various jurisdictions that Missouri likes to follow, like Florida, Texas, Arizona, and Georgia, all have restrictions ranging from 75 feet to 150 feet. There was some discussion about whether we should take it out from 25 feet to one of those areas, but I think the concern was that electioneering would similarly be restricted. And so the trade-off was going to be, do we give up electioneering within 25 feet? And risk that. And I think there was no appetite to take that risk.
But I think that the most important answer to your question is no, there are no specific proposals. And since this is an up or down vote, we're either accepting these positions as stated or we are rejecting them. Each proposal that the position might support in the future will be evaluated in the future. But for today, for the matter of today and our vote today, we are considering the position as written, which does not specify any more than is written. Okay, any other questions? Clarifying questions? Okay, let's take a vote.
I have we have a question to see the proposal again.
Sure.
Hands up for the questions.
Yeah, are they voting?
Well, since they haven't called for the vote.
Okay, so here it is again. Can everybody see that? I'll read it real quick. Voter intimidation and arms at the polls, firearms in or about polling places, allowing the open and or concealed carry of firearms up to the front door of polling places increases the likelihood that voters at such polling places will be intimidated. The League of Women Voters Kansas City supports proposals that prohibit the concealed and open carry of firearms in or about polling places.
And so I'm going to take just a moment to ask our Zoom room to please put their hands down unless they have a question. Okay, Marley, would you like to ask your question? Okay, I'm going to assume that that she stepped away for a moment. So do we have any other questions in the real room?
No, there's no
Okay.
questions from the real people. My apologies. All right, well, let's go ahead and take a vote then. Raise your hand if you approve of the position as written. Okay, and can you tell me what the number is in the real room? Okay, 18.
Okay. Okay, and if you'll put your hands down, I'll raise your hand if you oppose, please. Okay, that position is adopted. Thank you. And let's go on to the next position.
Okay, draft position 8, continuing with voter intimidation and arms at the polls. Educating voters on voter intimidation. Rationale: elections are the cornerstone of our democracy. Voters need to know when and how to report voter intimidation. Voter education is critical to the reporting and establishment of incidences of voter intimidation. Position: the League of Women Voters Kansas City supports educating voters about how to identify and report acts of voter intimidation, as well as the importance of doing so. Anne?
Okay, any clarifying questions for this one? Any in the real room? Okay.
No clarifying questions here.
Okay, if you support adopting that position, please raise your hand. Okay, and what's the number in the real room?
18.
Okay, all right, that position is adopted as well. And we're in the home stretch. Greg?
Yes. The next voter intimidation and arms at the poll positions, draft position 9, voter intimidation and arms at the polls, the primacy of voting rights. Rationale: voting and elections are the cornerstone of our democracy. The constitutional right to vote cannot be compromised. Position: the League of Women Voters Kansas City believes the right to vote should not be limited by the exercise of other constitutional rights, including First and Second Amendment rights. Anne?
Okay, any clarifying questions on this one? Marley, do you have a question? Okay. Okay, what about the real room?
No questions in the room.
Okay, if you would vote to approve this position as stated, please raise your hand. Okay, and what do we have in the real room?
We have 18.
Okay, and if you oppose adoption of this position, please raise your hand. Okay, the position passes, is approved. And let's go on to number 10.
Yes, our final position, this moves to early voting. Draft position 10, early voting as an election administration defense. Rationale: early voting is a means to protect election administration and voters from disruptive challengers and voter intimidation. Position: the League of Women Voters Missouri currently has the following position on early voting: support of absentee voting, advanced voting, and measures that facilitate participation in the election process. The League of Women Voters Kansas City's proposed position supplements that language as follows. Position: the League of Women Voters supports proposals that expand early voting period as a means of making elections less vulnerable to disruption for election administration and voters. Early voting should be expanded to include hours and days of the week that do not coincide with business hours, as well as a variety of election venues. In addition, the League of Women Voters Kansas City supports working with election administration to identify where early voting would reduce stress on election administration. All current forms of early voting should be expanded. Anne?
Okay, do we have clarifying questions? Okay, if you vote to approve adoption of this position as written, please raise your hand. And what do we have in the real room?
In our room here in Westport, we have 18.
Okay. And if you oppose, please raise your hand. Okay. That position passes as well. So that
Oh, yeah. So Sandy is saying, is there's anything in the chat? And can you see anything in the chat where people are asking questions, or are they just identifying themselves?
No, they have not. There have been a couple of questions, but we've addressed them as we've gone along. And there's a big piece of chat that is from Laura that is the definition of challengers. Yep. Okay, well, this concludes our business for today's meeting. I want to thank you again on behalf of the board and the entire league for all your hard work, both the committee and the members here. We are taken very seriously as an organization, and we are taken very seriously for a reason. This is the reason that we are taken seriously, because we are very deliberate and very thoughtful in our crafting of positions and our adopting of positions, and all of those questions and all of this back and forth is such an important part of the process. And so I want to thank everyone for taking the time to come together for the past several months, and for the committee for the past year, and do all of this hard work. And thank you very much. All right, Greg, do you want to say some last words?
Last words. Okay. No, I actually.
Only if you want
the
to.
bit- Yeah, no, the big thank you is to everybody, to membership, all the excellent questions and, and your excellent questions. So many thanks. You made it happen at all of these steps. Thank you very
Yes,
much.
yeah, thank you very much. All right, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks at the regular meeting. All right, thank you, everybody.